Hello and welcome back to TEDxZorilor. Today we are here with Harry Baker. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And we are curious. What will you be talking about today?
So today I'm going to be sharing some newer poems that I have written both before, during and after lockdown and COVID and how that affected me. So I'm going to be talking about the importance of creativity and coming together and being able to share in these spaces and that live connection that for me I really missed over the last couple of years.
And can you tell us, did you see any difference between the mood swings, let's say, between before the pandemic, after the pandemic?
Yes, I think for me as a performer I feel much more grateful to be in these places and to have that, and I think also you can feel it in the audience. For a while, you know, just after coming back from lockdown, people didn't know how to be in those spaces, and it took a while for there to be that sense of community and togetherness. But I think now that it is there, because we didn't have it for a few years, it feels heightened. It feels even more exciting to be able to be in this space together.
And tell us a bit about your history. You have a bachelor's degree in mathematics and still you're a poet. How was this transition? Why did you make this transition?
Yes, I love maths because I love solving problems and trying to get the right answers to things. And for me, poetry was a thing on the side that I would escape to when I wanted to avoid my maths homework. And then after a while I realized that when I was writing my poems I could put all of myself into it, my sense of humor, my beliefs, my attention to detail, and so slowly that began to take over. So I still love maths, I was still studying it because it was interesting, but by the time I finished my studies I realized that I wanted to at least try and do the poetry full time, because it was this thing that made me feel so alive, and I thought if I can give all of my time to it that'd be amazing. And if it didn't work out I would keep it as a hobby on the side, I would use the maths, but so far I've been able to do the poetry full time and hopefully can forever.
In 2014 you released your first album of poems, The Sunshine Kid.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the contents of this album, let's say.
Yes, so for a long time most things I write is with a view to then share them live, to perform them on a stage. So for me putting them together in a book was a new challenge, to think how does that exist in that space, and what happens if someone is reading it who doesn't know my voice, who is not hearing it the way that I hear it. And so I love putting it together, and for me it felt important to include some of the stories in there of how I got into poetry and where it's taken me. So a lot of those poems I wrote throughout school and university and beyond, so it is about finding out who you are and becoming comfortable in your own skin. And then last year I just released my second collection of poems called Unashamed, and so that feels like that has the next level of that, and that is talking about the maths as well as the poetry and how that all fits in together, and how I think when we can embrace all of the different parts of ourselves, that's when we can, I believe, become the best versions of ourselves. And if we can encourage each other to do that as well, then hopefully we can all thrive.
And what's your writing process? How do you use this creativity? Where do you get it from?
For me, there has to be a sense of playfulness in there and a sense of fun. And I think even if you are writing about something or talking about something that feels more serious, it is still a joyful act to create something that otherwise wouldn't exist. And so for me to be able to try and find that playfulness with language and rhythm and rhyme and alliteration, and then to try and put some of myself into it and include that heart. And so I think some poems come from the language, some poems come from the message, but I try and always have a combination of funny parts, serious parts, sad parts, meaningful parts, and try and put all of myself into it. So I think it feels like a fun thing to do still, and I think if it ever stops feeling fun then I will do something else, but for now I feel really lucky to be able to do this.
And what tips and tricks, let's say, you have for somebody that wants to start writing poetry? I'm from the Faculty of Letters, and I have a lot of colleagues that try. They have some ideas.
Yes.
So how can we help them?
For me, the thing I found most helpful was going to see live events, and I know there are incredible live events going on around Cluj-Napoca. So I think by seeing other people perform, I began to see what was possible. And so whether it's seeing someone who you think is a similar style to you or completely different, I think that can be really helpful to know how supportive that environment is, and to go along to an open mic and think, actually, I can try this, and it's scary and it's vulnerable, but actually to be held in that space, that's how you figure it out, and that's how you get better. You know, when I started, I wasn't very good at all, but you keep practicing and you slowly get there. So I think if you can enjoy that process of writing and that process of sharing without putting too much pressure on the final product, then as time goes on, you'll want to spend more time on it, and you can refine it and it can get better. But I think to try and enjoy the process, or at least trust the process while it's happening, makes all of the difference. I think if you go into it thinking, I have to create a masterpiece for this to be worth it, then you're putting too much pressure on it. But I think if you think, I've got something inside me and I want to try and express it, and I'll give it the best go that I can, that for me is enough.
And how's your experience so far in Cluj-Napoca? Is this your first time here?
It is my first time. I'm having a wonderful time. I arrived on Tuesday on an overnight train from Vienna, where I think we got stopped 5 times along the way for people checking tickets and passports. So when I arrived here, it was all a blur. But since then, I've had the best time. It's been sunny, which always helps. I've met lovely, friendly people. I've enjoyed walking around, seeing the architecture, feeling the atmosphere, and yeah, it's fantastic. And I'm so excited for today.
We hope you will have a wonderful time today at TEDx and in Cluj-Napoca. And let's look into that camera. What do we say to the people watching us? How can we inspire them today? What do we transmit to them?
I would say, if there is something in your life that makes you come alive or makes you feel like a brighter, bolder version of yourself, that is the thing to give your time and energy to. And if you have people in your life who encourage you to do that, those are the people that are worth listening to. And we can be those people for each other.
Once again, Harry Baker, we thank you very much for being here, and see you next time.